The owner's manual in your glove box wasn't written by the engineers who built your engine. It was written by the marketing department to make the car look cheap to lease, and by the accountants to make sure it expires exactly 1 day after the warranty ends. BMW tells you the transmission fluid lasts forever. ZF, the company that actually makes the transmission, says change it at 80,000 kilometers or watch it fail. Ford says your wet timing belt is good for 150,000 miles. Mechanics are seeing them disintegrate at 60,000. Many manufacturers say brake fluid only needs an inspection. Every European engineer who actually cares says flush it every 2 years. Today, we're rewriting the service schedule with actual mechanical truth, because the book they gave you isn't a maintenance guide, it's a warranty countdown timer. Before we expose the 9 biggest lies hiding in your service manual, make sure you're subscribed and hit the notification bell, because what I'm about to tell you could save your engine, and it's information manufacturers desperately don't want spreading around. Let's start with the lie that's destroyed more engines than any other: long life oil service intervals. BMW's condition-based service system will happily tell you to wait 25,000 kilometers between oil changes. Some manufacturers stretch this to 30,000 kilometers or 2 full years. The marketing pitch sounds convincing. Modern synthetic oils are better. Modern engines are more efficient. Modern filtration systems handle the contaminants. What they don't mention is that the sensor measuring your oil condition isn't actually measuring your oil condition. It's running an algorithm based on engine hours, throttle position, and temperature cycles. It has no idea if your oil is turning to sludge. Here's what mechanics see when they remove valve covers from BMW and Mercedes engines that follow the manufacturer's long life intervals. Black tar coating the camshafts, timing chain tensioners swimming in gunk, Vanos solenoids clogged with debris that should have been filtered out 10,000 kilometers earlier. In July 2013, BMW quietly shortened their recommended oil change interval from 24,000 kilometers to 16,000 kilometers in North America. No press release, no recall, no acknowledgement that the previous interval had been destroying engines. They just changed the number and hoped nobody would notice. The problem compounds in modern turbocharged engines. Turbochargers spin up at 200,000 RPM, cooled and lubricated by the same engine oil. When that oil degrades, the turbo bearings are the first to suffer. A turbo replacement runs 1,500 to 3,000 euros, all because the manual said you could wait another 5,000 kilometers. European mechanics have a saying about long life oil intervals: the only thing lasting for life is the damage to your engine. They've seen Mercedes OM651 diesels with sludge timing chains at 80,000 kilometers, Audi 2.0 TFSI engines with oil starvation to the timing chain tensioner, Volkswagen EA AAA engines with cooked turbo oil feed lines, all from owners who trusted the service indicator. The real purpose of extended oil intervals isn't engine longevity, it's making the car look cheaper to lease. Fleet managers comparing total cost of ownership see fewer scheduled services at lower cost. Private buyers see less maintenance as less hassle. The engine damage accumulates quietly until the warranty is a memory. What mechanics actually do: 10,000 kilometers or 1 year, maximum, no exceptions. On turbocharged engines, some go as low as 7,500 kilometers. The cost difference between yearly oil changes and one turbo replacement makes this the cheapest insurance you can buy. Here's a phrase that should terrify any car buyer: lifetime fill, sealed for life. BMW, Mercedes, Audi, Jaguar, and Land Rover all use ZF automatic transmissions. Every single one of these manufacturers tells you the transmission fluid never needs changing. Sealed for life, no service required. ZF, the German company that actually designs and manufactures these transmissions, publishes service documentation recommending fluid changes every 80,000 to 120,000 kilometers, or every 8 years, whichever comes first. For severe service, which includes sporty driving, frequent motorway cruising at high speed, or towing, ZF recommends 50,000 to 75,000 kilometers. So why do BMW and the others claim it's lifetime fill? Because lifetime has a very specific definition to a car manufacturer. Lifetime means the duration of the warranty. BMW's definition of lifetime, according to engineers who worked with ZF, is 160,000 kilometers. That's the point where they've determined the transmission is expected to start failing anyway. Past that point, it's your problem, not theirs. The fluid breaks down, it absorbs metal particles from clutch pack wear, it loses its ability to transfer heat effectively. By 100,000 kilometers, the fluid is dark, contaminated, and running 10 to 15 degrees hotter than it should. By 150,000 kilometers, you're looking at 4,000 to 7,000 euros for a transmission rebuild or replacement. A fluid and filter service costs 300 to 500 euros. Do the math. The irony is that ZF sells official service kits through aftermarket suppliers. The kit includes fluid, filter, gaskets, and hardware. They wouldn't manufacture and distribute service kits for a component that doesn't need servicing. The disconnect between what ZF says and what BMW tells customers reveals exactly who benefits from the lifetime fill fiction. Forum after forum is filled with owners who believe the lifetime claim. Transmissions failing at 120,000 kilometers with factory-filled fluid that came out looking like coffee grounds. Mechanics have started refusing to perform fluid changes on high-mileage transmissions that have never been serviced, because flushing out years of contamination can dislodge debris and cause immediate problems. If you've let it go too long, the damage may already be done. What mechanics actually do: first, fluid and filter change at 60,000 to 80,000 kilometers, then every 50 to 60,000 kilometers thereafter. Don't wait for symptoms. By the time you feel harsh shifts or hesitation, the damage is already done. Ford's 1.0 EcoBoost and Stellantis' 1.0 and 1.2 PureTech engines share a design feature that would have horrified engineers from 20 years ago. The timing belt runs inside the engine, bathed in oil. It's called a wet belt system, and it was supposed to reduce friction and extend service life. Ford tells owners the wet belt is good for 150,000 miles or 10 years. Stellantis said the same. Real-world experience has been rather different. The belt material degrades in oil over time. Small particles of rubber separate from the belt and circulate through the engine. These particles can clog the oil pickup, starving the engine of lubrication. They can block oil galleries feeding critical components. By the time you hear anything wrong, the damage is catastrophic. In 2024, Stellantis extended the warranty on PureTech engines to 10 years or 180,000 kilometers, covering 100% of costs for timing belt failures. They also opened a compensation portal for owners who had already paid for repairs. Ford has been offering goodwill repairs for EcoBoost timing belt failures on vehicles up to 7 years old with full service history. Neither company has recalled the affected engines. The really alarming part? Even the revised Ford engines that switch to timing chains still use a small wet belt to drive the oil pump. That belt isn't listed as a service item. Nobody's tracking its condition. Nobody knows when it might fail. The UK alone has over 700,000 vehicles equipped with wet belt EcoBoost engines. Across Europe, millions of Peugeot 208s, Citroën C3s, Vauxhall Corsas, and Ford Fiestas carry this technology. Many owners have no idea their engine has a belt running through oil. The service book mentions an inspection at 10 years. It doesn't explain what's been inspected or why a belt designed for 10 years might fail at 6. What mechanics actually do: wet belt inspection at 60,000 kilometers, replacement at 80,000 kilometers maximum, regardless of what the manual says. Use any oil specifically approved for wet belt engines. If you're buying a used car with a wet belt engine, verify the service history obsessively or walk away. Timing chains were supposed to be the solution to the timing belt anxiety. Chains don't deteriorate like rubber. They don't need scheduled replacement. They last the life of the engine. That was the promise. BMW's N47 diesel engine tells a different story. This engine, fitted to hundreds of thousands of 1 Series, 3 Series, and X1 models between 2007 and 2014, used a single-row timing chain mounted at the back of the engine. The chain tensioner was hydraulic, dependent on oil pressure to maintain tension. When owners followed BMW's long-life oil intervals, the oil degraded, the tensioner wore, and the chain stretched. The signature symptom was a rattling noise on cold start, called the death rattle by mechanics who saw it every week. By the time owners heard it, the chain had often jumped timing. Bent valves, catastrophic engine damage. Repair cost: 3,000 to 6,000 euros for chain replacement if caught early. Complete engine replacement if not. The problem wasn't unique to BMW. Volkswagen's EA211 1.4 TSI engine had chain tensioner failures. Peugeot's 1.6 THP engine, shared with Mini and Citroën, developed chain issues. Ford's 1.0 EcoBoost, before the switch to wet belts, had chain problems. Modern timing chains are thinner, lighter, and more stressed than chains from older engines. They depend entirely on clean oil and functioning tensioners. What mechanics actually do? Listen for any unusual noise on cold start. Change oil more frequently than recommended. On high-mileage vehicles, budget for preventative chain replacement before failure, not after. Modern coolant is often marketed as lifetime fill, good for 10 years or even longer. Many manufacturers' service schedules don't include a coolant change at all, only a visual inspection. Here's what happens to coolant over time. It becomes acidic. The corrosion inhibitors break down. The fluid that was supposed to protect your engine starts attacking it from the inside. The German automotive club ADAC and automotive engineers agree. Coolant should be flushed and replaced every 5 years maximum. regardless of what the manufacturer claims. In vehicles subjected to hard use, every 3 years is better. When coolant turns acidic, it eats away at gaskets, corrodes aluminium components, and attacks the heater matrix. A coolant flush costs €100 to €150. A heater matrix replacement requires dashboard removal and runs €800 to €1,500 in labor alone. Head gasket failure from coolant system corrosion can total a car. The test is simple. Coolant test strips cost €10 and measure pH levels. If your coolant is below pH 7, it's acidic and needs changing immediately. If it's been in the car for more than 5 years, change it anyways. What mechanics actually do: complete coolant flush every 5 years, visual inspection annually, test strips at every major service, never mix coolant types, and always use distilled water for topping up, not tap water. Direct injection technology has been standard on European engines for nearly 20 years. It improves fuel economy and reduces emissions. It also creates a problem the manufacturers forgot to mention in the service schedule. In port-injected engines, fuel sprays across the intake valves before entering the combustion chamber. The fuel acts as a constant cleaning solvent, washing away any deposits. In direct-injected engines, fuel sprays directly into the cylinder, bypassing the intake valves completely. The result? Carbon deposits build up on the back of the intake valves. Blow-by gases from the crankcase ventilation system coat the valves with oily residue that bakes into hard carbon over time. Airflow becomes restricted. Engine performance drops. Misfires occur. Volkswagen's 2.0 TSI engines were notorious for this problem. BMW's N20 and N55 engines suffered badly. Even Toyota's 2-litre direct injection engines developed carbon buildup, just more slowly. The fix is walnut blasting, using crushed walnut shells propelled by compressed air to physically remove the carbon deposits. It's effective but labor-intensive, requiring intake manifold removal. Cost: €400 to €800 depending on the vehicle. Many newer engines now use dual injection, combining port and direct injection to prevent carbon buildup. If your engine has only direct injection, carbon cleaning isn't optional. It's scheduled maintenance the manufacturer forgot to tell you about. What mechanics actually do? Walnut blasting or chemical cleaning every 60,000 to 80,000 kilometers on direct injection engines, more frequently if symptoms appear. Regular use of top-tier fuel with proper detergent packages helps, but doesn't eliminate the problem. Remember the blue coolant temperature light? The gauge that showed you whether your engine was cold or hot? Modern cars have largely eliminated these. Some show a fixed temperature gauge that doesn't move until the engine is warm. Others show nothing at all. This isn't a cost-saving measure. It's deliberate obscurity. Manufacturers don't want you thinking about engine temperature because they don't want you driving differently. Modern engines use low-viscosity oils that flow well when cold. Modern engine management adjusts fueling and timing for cold conditions. None of this means cold engines appreciate being driven hard. Oil takes longer to reach operating temperature than coolant. When your coolant gauge shows 90 degrees, your oil might still be at 60 degrees. Oil pressure is higher when cold because the oil is thicker, but that doesn't mean lubrication is optimal. Metal clearances in the engine are designed for operating temperature, not cold temperature. The deletion of temperature information encourages drivers to rev cold engines, accelerate hard on cold mornings, and trust that the computer is handling everything. The computer is handling fuel injection and ignition timing. It's not protecting your engine from excessive wear during warm-up. What mechanics actually do? Drive gently for the first 5 to 10 minutes of every journey. Avoid high RPM until the engine is fully warm. If your car has a digital temperature readout, don't trust it until the oil is at operating temperature, not just the coolant. Most European service schedules call for brake fluid inspection, not replacement. The fluid is checked for level and color, not actual condition. Brake fluid is hygroscopic, meaning it absorbs moisture from the air. Over time, water contamination increases. The boiling point drops. Corrosion begins inside the brake system. Fresh DOT4 brake fluid has a dry boiling point around 230 degrees Celsius, with 3% water contamination, which typically occurs within 2 to 3 years. The boiling point drops to around 155 degrees. Hard braking generates heat. When the fluid boils, you get vapor bubbles in your system. You can't compress liquid, but you can compress steam. That's why your brake pedal goes to the floor with nothing happening at the wheels. German manufacturers like Porsche, BMW, and Mercedes all specify brake fluid replacement every 2 years in their European market documentation. Many UK and Australian schedules call only for inspection, relying on the technician to decide whether the fluid needs changing. The technician is looking at color and level. Moisture content is invisible. Brake fluid test strips exist and cost less than €15 for a pack. They measure moisture content directly. The results are sobering. Most cars over 3 years old test at 2 to 3% moisture. Some test higher. The manufacturer's inspection protocol doesn't include using test strips. It's a visual check that cannot detect the actual problem. The consequences extend far beyond brake fade. Water in brake fluid causes corrosion inside the system. Brake calipers seize. ABS pumps fail. Wheel cylinders on drum brakes leak internally. These failures appear years after the contamination began, making the connection invisible to owners who have no idea that not changing brake fluid in 2019 caused the ABS failure in 2024. The fix is simple and inexpensive. A complete brake fluid flush costs €80 to €150. ABS systems with multiple bleed valves takes longer but still costs less than €200 at most independent workshops. What mechanics actually do? Complete brake fluid flush every 2 years. No exceptions. Fresh fluid from a sealed container. Never let an opened bottle of brake fluid sit for months before being used. Iridium and platinum spark plugs have extended service life compared to traditional copper plugs. Manufacturers have used this as justification for 100,000 km or even 160,000 km replacement intervals. Here's what they don't mention. Modern direct injection turbocharged engines are harder on spark plugs than naturally aspirated port-injected engines. Higher compression ratios mean higher voltages required to fire the plug. Turbocharging increases cylinder pressure. Direct injection creates different combustion characteristics. Some Iridium plugs are designed for performance and last only 30,000 to 50,000 kilometers. Others are designed for longevity and can genuinely reach 100,000 kilometers. The label says Iridium, but the specifications vary enormously. Worn spark plugs stress ignition coils. The coils have to generate higher voltages to jump a wider gap. Coil failures on modern coil-on-plug systems run €80 to €150 per coil, plus labor. A full set of coils can cost more than €600. More concerning, spark plugs left in aluminium cylinder heads for 100,000 kilometers can seize. Removal becomes difficult or impossible without damaging the threads. Mechanics who work on high-mileage European cars have developed techniques involving heat cycles, penetrating oil, and careful extraction tools. Some plugs snap during removal, leaving the threaded portion stuck in the head. Thread repair kits exist, but prevention is far cheaper than extraction. Mechanics who work on high-mileage cars budget extra time just for plug removal, never knowing if the job will take 20 minutes or 3 hours of heat cycles and penetrating oil. The cost of spark plug replacement is trivial compared to the consequences of ignoring them. A set of quality Iridium plugs costs €60 to €120. Labor to install them runs €100 to €200 on most cars. Compare that to ignition coil failures, catalytic converter damage from misfires, or worst case, detonation damage from degraded spark performance. What mechanics actually do? Inspect or replace spark plugs at 60,000 kilometers on turbocharged direct injection engines, regardless of manufacturer recommendations. Anti-seize compound on the threads during installation. Remove and inspect every 30,000 kilometers on performance applications. The pattern across all 9 of these service lies is identical. Manufacturers want to advertise low cost of ownership. They want to minimize dealership visits during the warranty period. They want the car to look cheap to run on paper, even if the real-world costs arrive just before the warranty expires. The engineers who designed your car know the actual service requirements. The marketing department decided what goes in the manual. And when the transmission fails at 150,000 kilometers because you never changed the lifetime fluid, the manufacturer will shrug and explain that you exceeded the expected vehicle life. Your car isn't disposable. It doesn't have a built-in expiration date, but the service schedule in your glove box was written by people who believe it does. The generation of mechanics who trained in the 1980s and 1990s learned strict maintenance intervals: oil every 5,000 kilometers, coolant every 2 years, transmission fluid every 50,000 kilometers. These weren't arbitrary numbers. They were based on decades of experience with what keeps machines running. Modern manufacturers looked at these intervals and saw opportunity. Every service visit is a chance for customers to defect to independent garages. Every maintenance item is something a competitor might advertise as not needing attention. The race to claim the lowest cost of ownership pushed service intervals further and further, until we arrived at today's absurdity. Lifetime transmission fluid, 10-year timing belts, oil changes measured in years rather than months. The cars didn't get tougher. The fluids didn't get magical. The service intervals got longer because the marketing departments demanded it. If you've been following manufacturer service intervals and wondering why your car doesn't feel as sharp as it used to, now you know. The fix isn't complicated. It's just more frequent maintenance than the manual admits you need. What service interval myths have cost you money? What maintenance items do you change more frequently than recommended? Share your experiences in the comments, because the best information about keeping cars alive comes from owners who've learned the hard way. Until next time, trust mechanics over manuals, trust component manufacturers over car brands, and trust your own judgment over marketing departments who've never changed their own oil.